Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of OC and TJ, aka the Colin O'Callahan Show. When it's just one person in this stream, it is your boy. It is COC. Uh, Safe from Hurricane Milton. I'm happy that we didn't lose any power or that we didn't suffer any structural damage. But at the same time, I also know that there are several families across the state that cannot say the same thing. So my thoughts and prayers go out to all the families that were affected because this hurricane was not only terrible, but this has been the third one in the last 3 months. So it really sucks. It really does. But again, I'm just sending my best to anybody that was affected that might have lost power, that might have suffered any structural damage or had to deal with a lot of floods. But we will definitely get through this. I know that for sure. But having said all that, let's get right into the show. Week 5 has come and gone, which is already crazy considering that we've been playing football for at least a month now. But we're heading into week 6. We got a game in just about a few hours between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. And I think we should just jump right into it and get into this game. So tonight, the 49ers will be visiting Washington to play the Seahawks at Lumen Field. 49ers are 2-3, which is surprising, but the Seahawks have lost 2 straight after starting off the year 3-0. So this is going to be any team's ball game, and only one of them is going to be able to finish with a 5. Only one of them is going to be able to finish with a decent record heading into the next week. Let's start with the 49ers because both teams are coming off of losses, but San Francisco's was definitely the more humiliating one. They blew a 13-point lead at halftime. Yeah, they lost their kicker because of an injury, but to be honest, that wasn't the biggest reason why they lost this game. Their offense only scored 1 touchdown, and that was in the first half. They turned the ball over 3 or 4 times in the second half. I mean, Brock Purdy threw 2 picks. Jordan Mason lost a bad fumble. And they tried to go for it on 4th and 23 because Jake Moody was obviously hurt, and they predictably failed. And the minute that the 49ers turned the ball over the first time, a switch flipped with the Cardinals offense, and, they pretty much wore San Francisco out. I mean, Kyler Murray showed up when he needed to. After the opening drive where he had a 57-yard touchdown run, he stalled out. He threw a pick. He only scored 3 more points. But, the more opportunities that San Francisco gifted him, the more that he was able to take advantage and the more plays that he made to win his team the game. So he made a lot of clutch throws. He had a huge 4th down conversion where he pretty much threw it off his back foot towards the sideline, and Marvin Harrison Jr. pretty much guaranteed that they were going to kick a game-winning field goal. And the defense played out of their minds. I mean, they held Deebo Samuel to 1 catch. They forced 3 turnovers in the entire second half. And remember, they also gave up a blocked field goal that was recovered for a touchdown late in the second quarter, too. So Arizona looked like they were going to get embarrassed once again. But 49ers, this is now the second time in a row where they've gone up against the division rival. They've had a comfortable lead, and they completely squandered it because of self-inflicted mistakes. So heading into tonight, they really need to win badly because if they fall to 2-4, then the odds of them making the playoffs are really super slim. And more importantly, it's going to give Seattle a very wide margin in this division. But at the same time, after their loss to the Giants, who knows if their 3-0 start was just a fluke, because they started off strong. They forced a fumble at the 1-yard line, and Rayshon Jenkins recovered it, took it all the way to the end zone for a 100-yard touchdown. But after that, I mean, their defense got torched by Daniel Jones. He didn't have Malik Neighbors or Devin Singletary, and he still threw for close to 260 yards with 2 touchdown passes and didn't even turn the ball over 1 time. Tyrone Tracy, he looked amazing in his first start, 18 carries for 129 yards. Darius Slayton had as many yards on just 8 catches. He stepped up big as the number 1 option, and Wan'Dale Robinson played great too, even though there were a couple of ugly drops that keep piling up year after year. But to be quite honest, I think most of the credit for this victory has to go to the defense and the special teams. Up until the final 2 minutes of the drive, Geno Smith did not score a single touchdown. Their only trip to the end zone was off of that scoop and score. He got sacked 7 times, 3 of them by Dexter Lawrence. There was no running game. DK Metcalf lost a fumble in back-to-back weeks. And really, if it wasn't for the Giants going 1 for 4 in the red zone and totaling just 44 yards in the fourth quarter. I don't think the Seahawks would have even had a chance to come back and send the game into overtime. But, finally, in the final 2 minutes, Geno finds Jackson Smith and Jigba wide open for a touchdown. The defense forces a quick 3-and-out, and Smith did everything he could to set the team up in field goal range, but the Giants special teams made the game-saving play by blocking the field goal. Isaiah Simmons with a huge jump in a clutch play, and it got recovered for a touchdown by Bryce Ford Whedon for 60 yards, and the game was pretty much over from that point on. So it was a great push and a great effort, but too little too late. So one of these two teams are going to have a 500 record or better. So really the last thing that either of them could do is lose this game, or else their playoff hopes are going to quickly fall down the tubes. So when it comes to the winner of this game, I got San Francisco here just because I know they got more firepower on their defense. They're less banged up on that side of the ball, even though they might not have Fred Warner. They've already been without Javon Hargrave. The Seahawks don't have Tariq Woolen, who is their second-best corner. And over these last 2 weeks, they've been getting absolutely gashed. They gave up a perfect day to Jared Goff, and then against the Giants, they made Daniel Jones look like Eli Manning. So they cannot afford to lose him. When it comes to the 49ers, they were in position to win that game last week. They should have won by double digits. If they just held on to the football, it wouldn't have been convincing, but at least they would have done the bare minimum to beat an inferior division rival. And now the 49ers are not even second place in the NFC West. So the 49ers have to really collect themselves. They got to figure this out quickly because they know they have the talent, but their defense falls apart down the stretch in the second half, and their offense, it could be one-dimensional at times because Jordan Mason – let me start over from there. The 49ers, they have the talent, but, they just keep getting in their own way. And that's been the case with a lot of teams this year. So I think the 49ers will win. I don't think it's going to be that big of a statement victory, but I still think they should win by double digits. I'll say they get it done 30-14. Now we get to the second straight London game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Chicago Bears. So last week's London game was definitely shocking, to say the least, but we'll get into that in just a bit. Both teams are coming off great wins, and the Jaguars are coming off their first of the season. And, it started off shaky. They couldn't convert on fourth down on their opening drive. Trevor Lawrence threw an arm punt of an interception. Gabe Davis fumbled the ball in a field goal range. But I think once Brian Thomas caught that 85-yard touchdown, the Jaguars started to settle in. The defense, after letting Joe Flacco torch them on the opening drive, going 7 for 7 for 75 yards, they only gave up 100 more passing yards for the rest of the game. Their defense came up with a huge strip sack. Whenever the Jaguars did give the ball back, their defense made sure that the offense had a chance to redeem themselves. And they were up by as much as 14 with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. I mean, Christian Kirk had a huge 61-yard play. Tank Bigsby had a huge performance after Travis Etienne went down because of an injury. And really, Trevor Lawrence finally looked like a $55 million per year quarterback. He threw for over 347 yards, or 370 yards, I'm sorry. He had a couple touchdown passes, and he didn't get sacked once. But when it was 34-20, really since the fourth quarter started, the Jaguars were pretty much doing everything they could to lose, because it started with a jump ball touchdown by Mo Ali Cox to start the fourth quarter, and that cut their deficit to, let me pull it up right here. It was 20-17. Then Christian Kirk gets free down the sideline for 61 yards, leading to a wide open touchdown of Brendan Strange. So that now Jacksonville's up by 10 points. Then the Colts go down the field once again. They settle for a field goal. Then Bigsby fires up the middle for a 65-yard touchdown. And then that's where the Colts somehow, some way, tie up the game, because Alec Pierce made 2 huge catches for 69 yards that led to a score by Trey Sermon to make it a one-score game. Then the Jaguars, when they get the ball back, they decide to attempt 3 passes, and only one of them was complete for no yardage. So they went 3 and out. They punted the ball right back to Joe Flacco, and 2 plays later, Alec Pierce is wide open for the game-tying touchdown. So I'm thinking to myself, good God, this is going to happen again. The Jaguars are going to let a winnable game fall from their hands. They've done this before, And I really did not think that they were going to have any chance of coming back. But finally, Trevor Lawrence didn't suck, because on the final drive, he had a perfect throw down the right side of Christian Kirk, and they did enough to get into field goal range. And all it took was a 49-yard field goal from Cam Little to put on the finishing touches. And then Trayvon Walker iced the game with his third and final sack with about, 17 seconds to go, 15, under 10. You get the point. So, honestly, if they had more than one win, I'd probably be going on a bigger rant by now. But at this point, I mean, they should just run away with it, because, to be quite honest, they should have won this game by double digits. And now, the winning streak at home against this team will continue for at least another year. When it comes to the Bears, they pretty much did what they needed to do against the Carolina Panthers. Their offense was efficient. Their defense held Andy Dalton to only 136 yards. They sacked him 3 times. Yeah, they gave up a early touchdown to Chuba Hubbard, but after that, Chicago stormed on a 36-3 run. DJ Moore had 2 touchdowns. DeAndre Swift was effective through the air and on the ground. Caleb Williams, he's getting a lot better. He's more confident. He's not overthrowing everything in sight. He's taking what the defense is giving him, and he's putting up good numbers in the process. And I want to see how they do against better teams, because their 2 best victories have been against the middling Rams and then the freaking Panthers. But they've gotten a lot better over these last couple of weeks, and especially with how bad they looked through the first 3 games. I will take this result. So there isn't really too much that needs to be said about this one. Heading into London, I think this is definitely going to be a competitive game. You got 2 number 1 overall picks going at it with each other. But Trevor Lawrence has not only had more turnovers, but his defense has given up the most passing yards in the league so far. And when you're going up against the Chicago Bears, who had back-to-back outstanding offensive performances, I don't really know if the Jaguars are in the best situation possible right now. So it's not really just the fact that the Bears have more talent on their offense and they have more production, but I trust their defense a lot more to get needed stops than I would with Jacksonville. So I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears here. I think it'll be pretty close through the first 45 minutes, but then I think they're going to make a few pivotal plays down the stretch that will allow them to pull ahead by double digits. So I'll pick the Bears. I'll say they win 27-17. And another reason why I'm picking them is because I'm going to be in Chicago when this happens. So I'm just hoping that the Bears don't let me down while they're on another continent. So continent and country. It's the same thing. All right. Now we get to what should be a pretty interesting matchup if you're a Patriots fan. We got the Pats versus the Houston Texans in Gillette Stadium. They're wearing the throwback unis, baby, and it's also the first career start for Drake May. So I'll talk about the Patriots here, because their last game against the Miami Dolphins was just flat out frustrating to watch. Let's just let this sink in. Tyler Huntley threw an interception. They missed a field goal. They botched a field goal, and they gave up a blocked punt. Yet the Patriots only scored 10 points throughout the entire game. It took 1 turnover for the Patriots to score their only touchdown, which was a 34-yard run from Ramondre Stevenson. And the craziest part about it was that this offensive line actually kept Jacoby Brissett in the pocket. He only got sacked twice, which was, I think, on their opening drive. It was back-to-back sacks. Since then, he didn't get taken down once. But they were also very poorly disciplined. Very undisciplined. 12 penalties for 105 yards. Most of them were holding. And anytime that New England had some type of a positive play, they found themselves pushed back. And, everything just went downhill. The offense sucked again. There was no passing game. The penalties were too much. Joey Sly missed a 33-yard field goal. And in the fourth quarter, the freaking Dolphins gashed this defense. And Miami's offense hasn't even done crap all year without Tua in the lineup. Jalen Wright and Raheem Mostert combined for over 160 yards, and 56 of them came on an 8-minute touchdown drive that gave Miami the lead. So the Patriots defense, doing everything they could, got exhausted once again. And they're already limited in depth. They've been without Barmore. They've been without Juwan Bentley. They didn't have Kyle Duggar because of an ankle injury. And now their other starting safety, who is also their captain, Jabril Peppers, is on the freaking commissioner's exemption list because of serious charges that I'm not going to bring up at this time because they're too heinous and disgusting. But the point is, the Patriots right now are just absolutely trash. And to be quite honest, when I found out that Drake May was going to get his first start, I had mixed feelings about it because you want to see this team have a spark. Gerard Mayo is trying to get a lot of fire and a lot of energy from his offense because it's been completely horrible since the season started. But at the same time, the supporting cast that Drake May has to work with is horrendous. The offensive line can't block anybody. The receivers hardly get open. And when they do, they're dropping catches, and only one of them has a decent performance. The running game is probably the only thing that works for them, but you don't know if they're going to be able to hold on to the freaking ball to save their lives. And now they're going up against the Texans team that is top 10 in sacks and has one of the best defenses in football. So to be quite honest, I don't really know how much of a chance the Patriots have. But at the same time, on the contrary, the Texans are a shaky 4-1 team right now. Defensively, they've been playing great. I have no issues with that side of the ball whatsoever. To me, it's their offense that leaves me room for concern. They got off to a great start. They were up 20-3 early in the third quarter. I get that Nico Collins was out of the whole second half because of a hamstring injury, but you would think that with C.J. Stroud, with Stephon Diggs having a great game, with Tank Dell, and plenty of offensive firepower, you'd be able to hold on to a convincing lead. But when the Bills got the ball to start the third quarter, they marched down the field, boom, 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 touchdown. Their defense forced a quick 3-and-out, and then faced with a 4th and 5 near midfield, it took one broken tackle from Keon Coleman to take it to the house. And now it was only a 3-point game. On the next 2 drives for C.J. Stroud, he turned the ball over, throws a horrible interception, then throws a pick across, and then gets strip sacked, and now the Bills tied the game at 20. And keep in mind, Josh Allen finished the game 9 for 30. 9 for 30. And for whatever reason, this game was tied with about a few minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. The Texans were in position on their final drive, or on their second to last drive, to march into field goal range, to make the Bills burn all their timeouts, and to win the game. But an intentional grounding penalty forced them to punt. Tommy Townsend pinned them down inside the 5-yard line. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, this is probably going to go into overtime because, you're pinned from inside your 5. The Texans have all 3 of their timeouts. You got to be able to run the ball just to burn some clock off. But nope. Sean McDermott and Josh Allen had a complete brain fart by chucking 3 deep passes in a row for incomplete passes. And the Texans, or actually the Bills, only took 25 seconds off the clock. And because they were pinned deep in their own territory, it forced the punt to get short. And all C.J. Stroud needed to do was complete one pass to get into field goal range. And sure enough, Ka'imi Fairbairn won it with a 59-yard kick. So right now, the Texans have not been dominant on the offensive side. Against the Colts, they looked outstanding, but their defense kept giving up a lot of points in the second half. Against the Bears, they scored less than 20, and C.J. Stroud was under pressure for most of the night. Then they get blown out by the Vikings. And then against the Jaguars, it took 2 stalled-out drives and a game-winning drive by C.J. Stroud to barely beat the Jaguars by 4. So I have yet to see them be able to win this game by double digits, to actually dominate like we've expected them to do in the offseason. But I think this could happen here. The Patriots haven't lost a game to the Texans at home ever, but I think this is the year where it finally changes. I just think the Texans, they got a way better quarterback. They got more talent on the offensive side. They're well better coached. Well, when the offensive line is not committing penalties. And the defense has been elite. They're a top 10 unit without a doubt. They've been one of the best passing defenses in the league. They're top 10 in sacks. And they've been doing whatever they could in all 4 of their wins. And I think this one will definitely be their fit. So I'll say the Texans win this game 27-10. So we'll see what happens. But, the only thing that can benefit New England is a historical fact. And we all know that those facts can get flipped upside down just like that. So, all right, now we get to the Baltimore Ravens versus the Washington Commanders. I'll start with Washington here because their victory was the least surprising. They blew out the Cleveland Browns 34-13. Their defense played outstanding. They sacked Deshaun Watson 7 times, 2.5 of them from Frankie Louvu. Their offense ran for 215 yards on the ground. And to be quite honest, it should have been a lot worse. But Jaden Daniels turned the ball over twice, and Terry McLaurin dropped a wide-open touchdown midway in the third quarter. So, I mean, they did what they needed to do, but at the same time, it was against the Browns with a horrible quarterback and a god-awful offense. So I wasn't really too surprised at what happened. Baltimore definitely overcame a lot against the Cincinnati Bengals on the road. They got off to a great start. They were up, 14-7. They scored 2 touchdowns on their first 3 drives. Their defense got back-to-back sacks, or they had 2 consecutive drives where they came up with a sack to force a 3-and-out. And then the minute Derrick Henry got tackled in the end zone by Sam Hubbard, that opened the floodgates for the Bengals because that led them to scoring a touchdown to end the half for them to take a 3-point lead. When the third quarter started, both teams went back and forth, scoring touchdowns on 3 straight drives. And because Cincinnati had the lead, they led by as much as 10 and as little as 3. So they were in the driver's seat for most of the game. But unfortunately, Joe Burrow cost him, or pretty much gave Lamar Jackson another shot by throwing a flat-footed interception to Marlon Humphrey with about a few minutes left. They were already in the field goal range. All they needed to do was make Baltimore burn their timeouts and run the clock out. And Lamar Jackson, who had already thrown for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, did enough to drive his team into field goal range. And Justin Tucker made a clutch kick from 56 yards out, a distance that he has struggled with over his last, 7 or 8 attempts. So, I mean, that interception really changed the whole momentum of the ball game. And Joe Burrow technically had one last shot to make something happen, but he got sacked on the first play, and the game was sent into overtime. So Baltimore won the coin toss. They received the ball, and it didn't take too long for them to get past midfield. But clapping for the snap, he let the ball slip through his hands. It took about a few seconds for somebody to fall on top of it. And a few seconds later, Cincinnati takes over into Baltimore territory. So the Bengals, who nearly gave the game away to end regulation, had one last shot to get the job done at home. And all they needed to do was put the ball into Joe Burrow's hands. He had thrown 5 touchdown passes. Jamar Chase had a great 190-plus yard game. T. Higgins caught 2 touchdown passes. But instead, Zach Taylor decides to run the ball 3 straight plays to settle for a 56-yard field goal. And before he shanked it wide to the left, the placeholder couldn't even hang on to the snap. So it was going to be a bad play either way. And right after that, Derrick Henry with a 51-yard toss run inside the 10-yard line. I mean, I honestly thought it was going to be a game-winning touchdown, but it didn't even matter because Justin Tucker made the chip shot field goal to win the game. And Baltimore has now won their 3rd straight, while Cincinnati is now 1-4. So I'm going to give a lot of credit to the Ravens here. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry were the only reasons why they won this ball game. Their defense has been one of the worst passing units in the league. And it's honestly really shocking that after they shut down Josh Allen just last week or 2 weeks ago against the Buffalo Bills, that they will let Joe Burrow carve them up the way that he did. And I get that they made more than enough plays down the stretch to get the job done, but when you're going up against one of the most unstoppable offenses in the league, in the Washington Commanders, you got to be on top of your you-know-what to make sure that you don't let another winnable game slip through your fingertips. So this is honestly going to be one of my favorite games of the week. I'm excited to see what Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels can do on a given night. And honestly, whoever makes the least amount of mistakes is going to win. And neither defense has looked sharp so far. So really, whoever has the ball last might win this game. But I'm going to go with the Ravens here simply because they're home. I think that they're going to be a lot more comfortable. I think that, their defense has to come out with a different mindset. And more importantly, I just think that the Commanders are I don't know. They've definitely been outstanding, but I think they have yet to face their toughest challenge so far. I know they played outstanding against the Cincinnati Bengals in week 3, but they also have a garbage heap of a defense. And I'm not saying that Baltimore's is better, but at the same time, I think Lamar Jackson is a more unstoppable player in this league than Joe Burrow is. So if you can't get anything done against him, then I don't think you're going to be able to catch up in this one. So I'll say the Ravens win in a very close shootout, 34-31. All right. Now we get to the Cleveland Browns versus the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Eagles are coming off their bye week. You know, they're getting A.J. Brown back. They're getting Devontae Smith. Their offense should be at full strength. The defense should be well rested. So they should feel pretty good about themselves heading into this home game, especially against the Browns team that just looks flat out dead. I mean, Deshaun Watson has lost all confidence in himself. He only threw for 125 yards. He got sacked 7 times. They went 1 for 13 on third down, 12 first downs for the whole game, just barely over 200 yards. And all you needed to know about that game was watching him walk into the sideline in disgust when Kevin Stefanski wanted to go for it on 4th and goal to start the third quarter. Yeah, there were too many men on the field, but to be quite honest, that's just been their season in a nutshell. And more importantly, it's been Deshaun Watson's tenure with the Browns in one photo or in one moment. So, I mean, if it were up to Kevin Stefanski, Deshaun Watson would be on the bench right now, but the problem is they can't afford to because of the albatross contract that the organization thought it would be a great idea to give him. And I mean, they're paying the price for it. I mean, they can't run the ball, they can't protect anybody. They only have one receiver that has a decent performance. They are one of the worst receiving groups in the league that drops passes left and right. And the defense can only do so much, but when they're on the field for too damn long, then they can't do anything. So I just don't have any faith for the Browns in this one. If the Eagles somehow stumble into this one or barely escape, then yeah, they're probably going to miss the playoffs. But I think the Eagles should do the bare minimum to win this game. I'll say they win 33-10, just for the simple fact that their offense has more firepower and their defense under Vic Fangio has been pretty decent so far. Pretty decent. So I didn't really need to waste my time with that one because, I mean, the Browns are just a dumpster fire and the Eagles are fraudulent from the top down. That's all I got to say. All right, now we have the Packers versus the Cardinals. This is actually going to be a lot more of a competitive game than people would expect. I mean, the Packers are at home. They're at Lambeau Field. They're coming off of a victory. But the Cardinals are coming off a very impressive road victory against the San Francisco 49ers. I already broke it down to start the game, but I think we got to give a lot of our flowers to the Cardinals. Yeah, the 49ers pretty much gave up a 13-point lead because of turnovers. But Kyler Murray took advantage of the opportunities that he was given in the second half after having such a miserable start to the game. I mean, after that 57-yard touchdown on the opening drive, he throws an interception. He only scores 3 more points, and it felt like they were going to get blown out once again. But after that tip pick that fell into the arms of Mac Wilson, a switch flipped on that sideline, and they pretty much ran away with it. You know, their offense did what they needed to do. They made clutch plays down the stretch. Their defense forced pivotal turnovers and really did a lot better than I thought. And I get that the 49ers didn't have a kicker, but again, that was not the reason why Arizona won this game. It was because they actually played with a different purpose. They were a mentally tougher team, and to be quite honest, the more chances that they were given, the more they ran away with them. So I can't take anything away from them. When it comes to the Packers, I think that, listen, if they were at full strength, I wouldn't have been as impressed as I was, but I think without Christian Watson, without Romeo Doubs, without Jair Alexander, and without Devontae Wyatt, I think that, you know, they did what they needed to do to win. You know, Jordan Love was decent. I think the offense made more than enough plays to get the job done, and I think their defense really saved them big time because if it wasn't for a boneheaded pick 6 by Jordan Love, this game would have been over by the third quarter because to start the second half, Matthew Stafford and the Rams offense turned the ball over on back-to-back drives. Kyron Williams lost a fumble. Matthew Stafford threw an arm punt of an interception in a double coverage. And the Packers capitalized on both of them with a couple of wide open touchdown passes to Tucker Kraft. And Green Bay was now up 24-13. Yeah, the Rams made a late push. They scored a touchdown late with about a few minutes left to go. Their defense forced a critical stop. But then on their final drive, when they actually had a chance to make something happen, Stafford gets sacked on second down by Carl Brooks. And that unfortunately leads to a stalled out drive. So to be quite honest here, it was a good effort by the good effort by the Rams, but it was just too little too late here. And, the Packers weren't that great, but they at least did enough. And they made the fewest amount of mistakes, which is really what you want to see, on the road against a scrappy Rams team that might not be at full strength, but still has plenty of players that can make things interesting now and then. So heading into Lambeau Field, this was a tricky one because as much as I want to go with my gut and pick the Packers, I also know that the Cardinals are a very scrappy team. You never know when they're going to come alive. And if the Packers somehow get in their way and make self-inflicted mistakes, then the Cardinals are going to make them pay. So this is a tough one. I can really see this go either way, but I'll go with the Packers. It's going to be really close. I think that their home field advantage is a lot better than the 49ers one because playing in Lambeau Field in October is extremely harder than playing in Santa Clara and the beautiful Bay Area. So I'll say the Packers win 23-20. So I don't know if it'll come down to a walk-off field goal, but I think Jordan Love will slightly outplay Kyler Murray. 6.5 versus the Commanders. I don't know if I would have gone 6.5 just because both offenses are absolutely fantastic and these defenses are not great, like I said. But I would have go 6.5. That's being a little generous there if I do say so myself. So I expect both offenses to play great, and I think it's going to come down to the very end. So that's my take. All right, now we have the New Orleans Saints versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I would probably say that this is going to be a very, very interesting division rivalry game. And I know that Derek Carr is going to miss the next few weeks because of an oblique injury, but I actually can't wait to see what Spencer Rattler is going to do. Because if there is anything that the Saints team needs, it's that spark back. Because through the first two games, they went from the hottest offense in the National Football League, and now they're back to being frauds, and they're right back to mediocrity. So to be quite honest with you, they should have been blown out by 30 points, to be quite honest with you. But the reason why it was still close is because the Chiefs went 2 for 7 in the red zone. And really, if it wasn't for an impressive interception by Kalen Saunders, it would not have been a one-score game in the third quarter. That is for damn sure. I mean, Derek Carr was awful. They couldn't run the football. Chris Olave wasn't even utilized. They tried chucking too many deep passes. I don't know if that was Carr or if that was the offensive coordinator. Their defense gave up so many wide-open passes to a Chiefs offense without Isaiah Pacheco, without Hollywood Brown, without Rashid Rice. Travis Kelce played great, and the unsung hero was Juju Smith-Schuster with 130 yards. So, to be quite honest with you, I don't really know if Spencer Rattler is going to make that big of a difference. I know that New Orleans is supposed to have a legitimate defense, but you saw how they got gashed against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs offense that has struggled all season long. And now you're going up against the Bucs, who have one of the best offenses in the league so far. To be quite honest, if it wasn't for that fumble or for that costly holding penalty on their final two drives of the game, then I think Tampa would have been able to hold out. But they got in their own way at the worst possible time. I mean, Baker Mayfield started off hot. He threw 3 touchdown passes. They played from ahead most of the time, but anytime they only settled for 2 field goals in the second half. And the more that they kept giving Atlanta the ball back, the more opportunities that Kirk Cousins had to just keep his team in the game. Younghoe Koo missed 2 field goals, and Kirk threw a late interception to Lavonte David, yet the Bucs still somehow lost this game in overtime. And who knows what would have happened if they had won the ball or if they had won the coin toss. But, I mean, to be quite honest, they let this one slip through their hands. Their defense made no adjustments. They pretty much dared Kirk Cousins to beat him by himself, which is exactly what he did. He threw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. And like I said, I mean, the Bucs offense, they needed to get a touchdown in that second half, or at least found a way to close the deal towards the end to make sure that they have a convincing lead in their division. And now they're in second place. So this has to be a week for them where they bounce back. You know that their offense is going to play a more consistent game. But more importantly, their defense has to play great. They have to really bounce back here, because if you're going to let Kirk Cousins throw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns after not being able to score a touchdown just 4 days ago against the New Orleans Saints, then what do you think you're going to do against Spencer Rattler, who's making his first career start, and a Saints offense that still has plenty of good weapons? You got Kamara, you got Rashid Shaheed, you got Chris Olave, you have Juwan Johnson, and you can't play down to your competition, or else you're probably barely going to make the playoffs, or you're going to completely fall out of the picture, and people are going to point to these 2 losses as to why. So I'll say that Tampa Bay wins. I think without Derek Carr, we just don't know what we're going to get with the Saints offense. And while I don't expect Baker Mayfield to have the best game, I at least expect him to make enough plays to make sure that Tampa Bay stays in front. So I'll say they win 23-13. 23-13. Yeah, I don't think Jaden Daniels has had that many challenges either. But at the same time, I mean, the Baltimore Ravens defense has been absolutely horrible. I mean, outside of one game against Josh Allen, they've just been getting torched every single week. I mean, they blew a 10-point lead to the Las Vegas Raiders. They gave up 27 points to the Chiefs. Against the Cowboys, they nearly blew a 28-6 lead. And against Joe Burrow, they gave up 5 touchdown passes. And it took 3 horrible drives by the Bengals just for Baltimore to barely escape. So, yeah, I know that Daniels hasn't had that many challenges, but at the same time, Baltimore's defense, they've only had one good game so far. So we got to see if we have to see if they will be able to bounce back. All right, now speaking of rivalries, let's get to the Indianapolis Colts versus the Tennessee Titans. This is not going to be as interesting as I thought it would be in the offseason. You know, the Titans are coming off a bye week, but the Colts are coming off a just so close comeback loss against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were down 14 with 5 minutes to go, and Joe Flacco led 2 straight touchdown drives in less than 3 minutes to tie the game at 34. But at the same time, I mean, it was a little bit too little too late, if you ask me. You know, they got off to a great start on their opening drive. Flacco picked apart the Jaguars defense down the field, 7 for 7 for 75 yards. 4th and goal at the 1, he throws the touchdown to Michael Pittman Jr. But since then, he only threw for 100 more passing yards heading into the 4th quarter. I mean, Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars offense, they gifted them 2 more turnovers to give the Colts more breathing room, but Indianapolis stalled out. And that was eventually what led to the Jaguars getting more comfortable into the ball game. You know, Indianapolis' defense got torched for over 370 yards. They gave up 2 huge touchdown runs to Tank Bigsby, and that unfortunately led to their huge deficit. So I think that Joe Flacco, if he starts, I think he will do more than enough to win this game against a pretty subpar defense. But at the same time, I mean, you just have they couldn't play all 4 quarters. They got off to a great start, then they stall out, and then when the 4th quarter hits, it's like, you know what? Let's just start scoring points now, because we're down big. We don't have that much time, but you know what? Let's finally get something going. And the minute Trevor Lawrence got the ball back in the final 2 minutes, he did what needed to be done. They kicked the game-winning field goal, and Flacco technically had 2 last shots, but he took the game-losing sack by Trayvon Walker. But I think this will be a week for the Colts to bounce back. Really, it just comes down to this. If they can force Will Levis to turn the ball over at least once, then that will be enough. Because we all know that this offense has been the biggest reason why they only have 1 win for the season. And I know that Indianapolis' defense has been putrid, but I still think they have a good amount of playmakers to make this Titans team a little uncomfortable. And when you give Joe Flacco any opportunities, especially since Jonathan Taylor will be back fully healthy. We'll see. I'm not sure. But you get it. You get the point. You give Joe Flacco the ball in short field, and you give him a chance to play from ahead, then yeah, it's gonna take a miracle for you to come back here. So I'll say the Colts win 26-16. I'm gonna go with the scoregami here. I don't even know if that's the scoregami, but it's gonna be a weird score. So, all right, now we get to the 4:00 games. Let me see how many we have left before I get into it. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we get to the Denver Broncos versus the Los Angeles Chargers. LA is coming off a bye, while the Broncos are coming off their 3rd straight victory. That's right, they have a winning record, which is shocking, but they broke an 8-game losing streak against the Las Vegas Raiders. They got off to a horrible start. They fall behind 10-0. Gardner Minshew goes 9 of 9 for 115 yards. And while the Broncos did kick a field goal to make it a one-score game, it took a 40-yard run by Amir Abdullah, and the Raiders already had 1st and goal at the 5-yard line. But all the momentum shifted when he overthrew a wide-open touchdown to Brock Bowers, and it got intercepted by Patrick Surtain, who ended up taking it all the way to the house for a 100-yard pick six. And since then, let me pull up my notes here because, oh boy, you're not going to like when I read this stat. Since then, he only completed 3 more passes out of 8 attempts for 23 yards with an interception. So, yeah, that was egregious. I mean, the offense without Devontae Adams, it was completely one-dimensional once again. Their quarterback was so awful that he ended up getting benched for Aiden O'Connell, and the defense predictably quit in the second half. But Bo Nix had one of his best games of the season. He threw for over 200 yards. He scored 3 touchdowns. He didn't turn the ball over, and that has been one of the biggest reasons why Denver has been winning. Yeah, their defense has been playing outstanding, but if you look at their first 2 losses, he's thrown 4 interceptions. In their first 3 wins, 0. So as long as you don't turn the ball over and you continue to improve and progress, then the Broncos are always going to have a shot. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to Sean Payton and Vance Joseph for doing their best to try to turn this ship around. You know, they caught a lot of heat in the offseason because of what happened with Russell Wilson. But Bo Nix is definitely getting better. This defense is elite. And who knows? If they keep this up, they'll be a surprise playoff contender. And heading into this game, since Justin Herbert has been the starter for the Chargers, he has not won a game against the Broncos in Denver. So the Broncos have a lot of momentum heading into this one. The Chargers might have had the week off, but at the same time, I just think that, you know, their offense is subpar and their defense has been great, but at the same time, you just have to see like how they're going to do over the course of the rest of the season. And it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think both defenses are going to play their tails off, especially in Mile High. It's one of the hardest places to play in the league, without question. I mean, I don't even have to bring up why. The big hint is elevation. But I think the Broncos will win. I don't think it'll be pretty. I don't think both offenses are going to play that great. But again, as long as Bo Nix just holds on to the football, then I think they're going to have a strong chance of winning this game. So we know what we're going to expect from their defense, but if Bo Nix could pick up where he left off last week, then I think they'll be able to run away with this one. So I'll pick the Broncos here 17-10. 17-10. All right, now we get to the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Speaking of them, I already talked about the Raiders pretty much. I think they're starting Aiden O'Connell for this one because of Gardner Minshew's horrific performance last week against the Denver Broncos. Started off perfect, and then that 100-yard pick six completely changed everything. And right now they look like one of the worst teams in the league. I gotta tell you. And it's not just because of the record or because of the fact that they're making a quarterback change. I knew that this team was not going to be that great. You know, they don't have a legitimate starting quarterback. They don't have a running game. Devontae Adams is the only guy that can really consistently get open, and he wants out. And as scrappy, as competitive as that defense plays, there are times where they're going to get torched. And, I mean, unless they get a heroic effort from their offense, then they're nowhere near playoff contenders. I hate to say it. Davante Adams, he wants out. Christian Wilkins is out indefinitely because of a Jones fracture. And now you're starting Aiden O'Connell, who's not that much of an upgrade. They're literally the same freaking quarterback. There are guys that can help you win in short sample sizes, but you can't really count on them to be legitimate franchise starters. So, there are just too many flaws with this Raiders team. And I get that Antonio Pierce is trying his best, but they didn't really do anything to get better in the offseason. You signed Christian Wilkins, you drafted Brock Bowers, but when Davante Adams is gone, the only guy that you could really count on to give his 100% is Max Crosby, and he can only do so much. But let's get into the Pittsburgh Steelers here because they lost a tight grudge match to the Dallas Cowboys at home, 20-17. And to be quite honest, I get that Dallas doubled the yardage in this one, but I don't know how the Steelers didn't win this game. Because leading up to that final drive, their defense was doing everything they could to keep Dak Prescott out of rhythm. They didn't let him score a touchdown in their 3 trips to the red zone. They forced 3 turnovers. Dak looked average at best. CeeDee Lamb was frustrated. And for whatever reason, the Steelers only scored 7 more points off of those turnovers. Their offense was so conservative in the first half. They didn't really put the ball in their quarterback's hands. And then when they came back from halftime, you were like, you know what? We should probably count on our quarterback to get the job done. And he did enough by leading a go-ahead touchdown drive with about, 4 minutes and 55 seconds remaining, I want to say. But, at that point, Dak Prescott just had too much time. And honestly, he did what needed to be done towards the end. He did enough. It didn't take long for him to get into Steelers territory before the 2-minute warning. A wide-open dump-off pass to the fullback Hunter Lepke set up 1st and goal at the 4. They failed on the first 3 tries. They nearly fumbled away on the second one, but Dak showed up in the clutch with a touchdown pass on 4th and goal to Jalen Tolbert. And Dallas barely won the game by 3. 3 turnovers, 11 penalties, 1 for 4 in the red zone, yet they still did enough to win. Their defense, under the circumstances, looked sharper than I thought. They didn't have Micah Parsons. They didn't have DeMarcus Lawrence. They lost Marshawn Nealon. And, against the Steelers offense that has been getting better over the course of the year, this was definitely a lot better than I thought. Justin Fields only threw for 127 yards. When you have that limited depth on your defense and you're able to do that against, an opportunistic Steelers offense, I'd say that's pretty impressive. But, Pittsburgh just completely beat themselves in this one. They never took advantage of their opportunities early on, and their defense broke down at the worst possible time. And, it's just the Cowboys made a few more plays than them. That's all it really came down to. And, after those turnovers, you got to get points off of them, and they could only get 7 on 1 of them. So, not much that needs to be said there. So, heading into this one, I think the Steelers should bounce back here. Like I said, the Raiders don't have a quarterback. They're going to be without Davante Adams again because of the hamstring injury and also because of that trade request. They just lost Christian Wilkins because of that Jones fracture. And, unless the Steelers hideously play down to their competition, which they tend to do against inferior opponents, then I just don't really have any faith in Vegas here. So I'll say the Steelers win in a pretty low-scoring game. I'll say they do it 20-10. So that's all I'll say there. All right, we got about 4 more games left. Let's go to the Cowboys versus the Lions. Lions are coming off of a bye week, and I pretty much already talked about what needed to be said with the Cowboys. 3 turnovers, 0 for 3 in the red zone, yet it didn't matter because Dak Prescott showed up in the clutch and led a pretty impressive game-winning drive to win by 3. So not their best effort, but you know what? Defense played great, and Dak Prescott showed up when he needed to. So I can't really take anything away from them. Lions are coming off of a bye week, and just 2 weeks ago, Jared Goff had a perfect game against the Seattle Seahawks, and they are looking for revenge because I think we all know what happened the last time they played the Detroit Lions, or they played the Cowboys in AT&T Stadium on a big stage. They're down 20-13. they have a chance to tie the game. They throw a touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown, but they decide to go for 2 to try to win. And while Taylor Deck made the catch in the end zone, it got called back because of a phantom illegal man downfield penalty. And, the Cowboys hang on. So I'm sure that the Lions are going to be looking for revenge here. They have not forgotten it whatsoever. Yeah, there are new pieces that might not know the significance or the stakes, but those that have been around there the longest, they know that they're not going to pick up where they left off last year if they don't beat this team. So the Cowboys, though, they really need to get an impressive victory under their belt. I mean, the Cowboys offense has been average at best, and I get that the defense was great last year, but Jared Goff is better than Justin Fields, and they have weapons that can really catch this Cowboys defense off guard. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown, you got David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams. You got one of the best O-lines in the league. And if you don't have Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence for this one, then good luck. And that's all I'll say there. So I think the Lions will win. I think it'll be really close just for the simple fact that I don't know how the Lions defense is exactly going to look against Dak Prescott because, listen, Dak Prescott can give you a lot of headaches, but at the same time, he is capable of having promising performances. And the Lions defense is the type of unit that Prescott would look strong against. So I think both quarterbacks are going to look great, but I just have a lot more faith in the Lions offense to make more plays down the stretch and to make fewer mistakes. If Jared Goff plays the way that he did 2 weeks ago, or at least plays somewhat close to that, then I think they're going to be able to get a huge win on the road. So I'll say the Lions win 30-27. All right, now we get the Atlanta Falcons versus the Carolina Panthers. So Atlanta is coming off a very impressive Thursday night victory against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I said heading into this one that Kirk Cousins needed to play a lot better because after not being able to score a touchdown against the Saints, they were very fortunate to get out of there with a victory. But we all knew what the game plan was for Tampa Bay. It was shut down the run, dare Kirk Cousins to beat them, and that was exactly what happened. And he lived up to the challenge, and he played absolutely phenomenal. He completed 42 passes. He threw for 510 yards. What's up, Sports Daily? And, yep, he did get held back with a couple missed field goals and an interception late to Levante David. But when he got the ball back after those turnovers, he redeemed himself and was really the biggest reason why Atlanta stayed in the ball game to begin with. Because their defense gave up 3 touchdown passes to Baker Mayfield. They were down by 7 They were down by 7 at halftime. And while Tampa Bay only kicked 2 field goals and had a brutal fumble and a holding penalty on their final 2 drives, I mean, Kirk Cousins stepped up when he was needed the most. And when he got the ball back in overtime, it was game over. Because 4 plays into it, he throws the stick route to Kadarius Hodge. He breaks the tackle, takes it all the way for a game-winning touchdown. And it just summed up an outstanding night for him. It was definitely one of the best performances that I've ever seen from him in quite a long time. And I'm sure that there are plenty more that I'm not thinking of right now. But I think this one is definitely near the top of the list. And, yeah, I like that, Kirk. I like it. I like that. Carolina, on the other hand, they're coming off a demoralizing blowout defeat to the Chicago Bears. I mean, I expected them to lose, but I just at least thought it was going to be competitive. I mean, they started off great. They had a 38-yard touchdown run to Chuba Hubbard, and then since then they get stormed off the field 36-3. And Caleb Williams was great. DJ Moore caught 2 touchdowns against his former team. And then Andy Dalton, I mean, he only threw for 132 yards and a pick. And, I mean, Deontay Johnson and Xavier Liga, they only caught 4 passes combined. And the best pass catcher for the day was Jalen Coker, who's an undrafted rookie from Holy Cross. Which, by the way, the only reason why I name dropped him is because my boys from Offspeed Sports, they interviewed him on their podcast, and he's a Holy Cross alum. We have actually guys on our group that actually go to Holy Cross. So shout out to Jalen Coker. He actually had a really solid game, and he made a few big catches. And that's not to – but me bringing his name up is not to disrespect him, but at the same time, when you're the Carolina Panthers, who is just trying to have a decent season, then putting up these numbers is just – it was just bad. But Bryce Young at least got to play, with battered offensive linemen and nobody to throw the ball to. But hey, you got to give him those reps, right? Yeah, I don't get why they played him either. And I also hated the reasoning why Dave Canales decided to play him to protect Andy Dalton from getting injured. Yeah, no, that really makes sense. Yeah, no, let's protect Andy Dalton, but let's throw our number 1 overall pick into the fire in garbage time and potentially risk hit and potentially put his NFL future in jeopardy. Yeah, no. I totally get the reasoning there. But honestly, I think this game is going to be a lot closer than a lot of people think. Carolina has beaten the Falcons in the last 2 home matchups. And, Andy Dalton might not be the best solution when it comes to a starting quarterback, but he has at least given this offense a little bit of a spark. And they're scrappy, and that they can hang with the best of them. But I think that the Falcons should do more than enough to win. I just really don't know how Carolina's defense is going to look without their 2 best players. And, I don't expect Atlanta's defense to play lights out, but just like Tampa Bay, I expect them to make pivotal plays down the stretch. And I think that they'll be able to run away with this one in the second half. So give me the Falcons here. I'll say they win 24-10. Okie dokie. Now we get to 2 more games here. We got the Cincinnati Bengals versus the New York Giants. One is coming off another heartbreaking loss. The other is coming off a very impressive victory. Let's start with the latter because I'm a very happy person. I am very optimistic. And to be quite honest, Daniel Jones is having a pretty decent season so far. After that week 1 debacle against the Vikings, he's been pretty good so far. They're not the greatest numbers, but at the same time, he's thrown the same amount of touchdowns as Patrick Mahomes, and he's thrown fewer interceptions. So when you see that happening, that's honestly a little bit mind-boggling here. But against the Seattle Seahawks, without Malik Neighbors, without Devin Singletary, he looked pretty sharp out there. He threw for close to 260 yards. He threw a couple touchdowns. Didn't get out to the best start. They fumbled the ball at the 1-yard line, and it got recovered for an early Seattle touchdown. But since then, Tyrone Tracy, he took over in the backfield. Darius Slayton stepped up as the number 1 option. They both had 129 yards. And to be quite honest, if it wasn't for the red zone struggles or their inability to close the deal in the 4th quarter, I don't think the Seahawks would have made this as close of a game. Because it took until the final 2 minutes of the 4th quarter for the Seahawks offense to get on the board. Dexter Lawrence had 3 huge sacks. Geno Smith got dumped a total 7 times. DK Metcalf fumbled the ball. There wasn't any running game. But at the same time, after Geno Smith threw a touchdown to Jackson Smith and Jigba to cut the deficit of 3, and then after the Giants went 3 and out on the ensuing possession, the Giants defense held. They forced a 47-yard field goal, but the special teams came up with the play of the day when Isaiah Simmons jumped over the line of scrimmage, pretty much leaped over the line of scrimmage, blocked the kick, and Bryce Ford-Wheaton took it back for a 60-yard touchdown that put the game away. So they played outstanding on all 3 levels. There isn't anything I could really take away from them. It was just that they should have really blown this team out and never let them hang around. So that's the only criticism I have for them. For the Bengals, I just don't know how they keep losing these games. Just think about it. They only scored 10 against the Patriots, who are the worst team in football right now. Their offense fumbles the ball in the 4th quarter, and their defense has a brutal pass interference penalty. Then the defense gets torched against Washington. Then the next week they beat Carolina. And then against Baltimore, they give up over 300 passing yards and 4 touchdowns to Lamar. Burrow throws a horrible interception in the final 3 minutes of regulation, then gets sacked to force the game into overtime. Evan McPherson shanks a 56-yard game-winning kick, albeit while the placeholder fumbles the snap. And they were given a late chance in overtime to try to win the game when Lamar Jackson lost the fumble, but then they still can't close the deal. And all it took was a 51-yard touchdown or a 51-yard run by Derrick Henry and a chip shot field goal from Justin Tucker for Baltimore to barely survive and win. This has been the MO for the Bengals all season long. Their defense is trash, and their offense keeps shooting themselves in the foot at the worst possible time. Let's put this in proper perspective. Joe Burrow right now has thrown 12 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. He leads the league in passer rating. yet they're still 1-4 because their defense is giving up the second most points out of anybody else in the league. They did well in the first 2 weeks, but then since then, they've given up 38, 20, 24, and 41. So, I mean, this defense has to figure it out. Lou Anarumo is a way better coordinator than what we've seen from him in the last few weeks. And, I mean, if they somehow stumble into this trap against the Giants, then they have way bigger changes that they need to make. And they actually could fall into a trap game because the Bengals have not beaten the Giants at MetLife Stadium since 1972. So it would not shock me one bit if the Giants somehow found a way to win. But I don't really see the Bengals somehow starting the year 1-5. And if they do, then I'm just giving up on them because for as much talent as they have, for as efficient as their offense is, and for the amount of talented guys that they have on their defense, they can never click when they need it the most. And that is why they're in the situation that they're in. So I'll pick the Bengals, but it is not going to be a blowout. So I'll say they win 31-28. Yeah, Daniel Jones, you might throw 4 touchdown passes here. So if you pick up where you left off last week and then more, then yeah, we're going to have a way better outlook for you heading into the rest of the year. So I'll say that. Okie dokie, now we get into Monday Night Football between the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. Okay. I might as well just save the worst for last. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills here because they did not deserve to win that football game. Josh Allen was terrible. Their defense got torched early on. They were down 20-3. The fact that this was even tied is flat out unbelievable. But, you know, their offense scored on their first 2 drives of the second half. Then their defense forced 2 huge takeaways. So it made sense there. But that final drive was inexcusable. And it completely cost them the game. I'm blaming the 50% of this on Josh Allen and 50% of this on the head coach. You get the ball pinned down inside the 5-yard line. The Houston Texans have all 3 timeouts. You're under a minute remaining. You're going to be able to force the game into overtime. And if you get the ball, there's a high chance that you could actually win. And instead, you chuck not 1, not 2, but 3 deep passes that went incomplete. You only take 25 seconds off the clock. You allow the Texans to take advantage of a short field situation because of a bad punt. And all it took was a complete pass from C.J. Stroud to set up a 59-yard game-winning field goal by Ka'imi Fairbairn. That was just flat out horrendous. It was disgraceful. And that was it's not the biggest reason why they lost this game, but it completely cost them in the end. Because after coming back from a 20-3 deficit, Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, they got over-aggressive. They were arrogant, just like they were last year, and they cost themselves a winnable football game. Josh Allen went 9 for 30. They were 3 for, 14 on third down? 0 for 5 in the second half. They were 1 for 3 in the red zone. And yet somehow they still had a chance to send the game into overtime. Tied at 20. And you chuck the ball deep 3 plays in a row. And the worst part about it was that the Texans were literally doing everything they could to be like, here, take it. We don't want to win. And the Bills just, this just comes down to coaching. This comes down to your quarterback. When you go 9 for 30 and you completely screw up the clock in the final seconds, like that was inexcusable. And I don't want to go any further because the Jets are in an even worse situation. First off, they got humiliated against the Vikings in London. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was terrible. He threw 3 interceptions, one of them for a pick 6. They couldn't run the football once. And their defense, once again, had an outstanding performance. They only gave up 1 touchdown. They forced 2 turnovers. One of them an interception to Sam Darnold. One of them an interception by Brandon Echols. And to be quite honest with you, the Vikings should have honestly won this game in a shutout because if you look at the 3 scoring drives from the Jets, the first was off a big punt return because of a short punt pin from inside their 5-yard line. Their only field goal was because of a roughing the kicker penalty, and their final touchdown was because of that interception. Sam Darnold completed less than 50% of his passes. And to be quite honest, again, if it wasn't for a bunch of holding penalties and a bunch of pass interference calls on Sauce and DJ Reed, then Minnesota's offense might not have been able to reach the end zone. Meaning that the Jets didn't turn the freaking ball over. Not only would they have won the game, but Robert Saleh would still have a job right now. So, that's right. Just 2 days after their humiliating defeat to the Minnesota Vikings, the Jets decide to fire their head coach 5 games into the regular season. Now, listen, I've never been the biggest fan of Robert Saleh. I didn't really like him that much when he was on Hard Knocks. I thought he was a little too rah-rah. I thought he was a lot cocky. He didn't really have the traits that showed that he was a true leader. But at the same time, he did not deserve to get fired this early in the year. His defenses have been great since he took over. And to be quite honest, they pretty much knew what situation they were going to get into when they acquired Aaron Rodgers. He was going to want full control of the offense. He wanted the guys that he was going to have the guys that he wanted in his back pocket, which is why Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator and why Allen Lazard is the second best receiving option on this team. And the Jets knew that if this somehow blew up in their faces, they were going to have to make massive changes. And listen, I would not have been surprised if Robert Saleh would have been let go, if they missed the playoffs at the end of the year. But to fire him 5 games into it, when you're only a game back from the division and you actually have a chance to play spoiler against a Bills team that just lost 2 in a row and their offense has been flat out pathetic, I just thought it was a little too much. So Jeff Ulbrich is going to be the new interim head coach. Nathaniel Hackett has been stripped of play calling duties, and Todd Downing is going to take over, which is even worse because his Titans offenses in his final 2 years were just flat out disastrous. But, I mean, this team is right back to being one of the biggest laughingstocks in the league. And they're not that much different than last year. The only difference is that Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback. He's been playing awful. Their offense has been flat out pathetic. And the defense is, once again, the only reason why they're relevant, which is exactly what they were trying to avoid last year when they made the move for Aaron Rodgers, and 2 years ago when they still had Zach Wilson. So this team is a dumpster fire right now. And honestly, if they don't recover and if they somehow stumble into another losing season, Saleh isn't the only one that's going to be out of a job. I can guarantee you that. I don't even have to report it. We all know that Woody Johnson is just not going to skirt into another season with the same supporting cast. That's just not going to happen. So heading into Monday Night Football, I have the Bills winning this game. But I also would not be surprised if this was a close one. In his last 2 starts at MetLife Stadium, Josh Allen has put up some of his worst numbers. I mean, last year he got sacked 5 times. He threw 3 interceptions. I think 2 years ago he got sacked 6 times. So this Jets defense has had his number at home. And all they really need from Aaron Rodgers is to at least look like 70% of what he used to be for them to win this game. But I think the Bills, they're going to need a bounce back. They see this situation and they think, okay, the Jets just fired their head coach. It's pretty much a circus right now. Aaron Rodgers essentially cost his head coach his job. And all we need to do is just stop beating ourselves and finally get on the same page on offense and make sure that our defense picks up where they left off in the second half. So I think the Bills will win. It's going to be pretty close. But at the same time, like if Josh Allen just continues to be inaccurate and to turn the ball over like he did last year, then not only are the Bills fraudulent, but the AFC East might be one of the worst divisions in the league. Because you've got the Bills, who have been pretty much pathetic over the last 2 games, the Jets that just fired their head coach, a Dolphins team that's lifeless without Tua, and you got the freaking Patriots, who are dead in the gutter. So I got the Bills, but I think they'll win 23-20. So hopefully that will happen. Okay, so all the picks are locked in. That will wrap up our Week 6 picks. Let me pull up my Week 5 recap and see if I'm missing any teams that might have a bye this week that I didn't really get to talk about. So Dolphins are heading into a bye week. I pretty much talked about that. The Chiefs are heading into a bye week. The Vikings are heading into a bye week. And I think that's it. I could be wrong, but I think we got into what we needed to talk about. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for additional content. And leave a comment below. Who do you think will win this week and why? Have a great rest of your week, everybody. If you're in Florida, I hope that you're safe and that you're okay, from the hurricane. And again, all my best wishes and prayers and thoughts go out to those that were affected because, again, these hurricanes are they're flat out devastating and they suck. And I hate them just as much as everybody else. So love you all. We'll see you next week. Peace, everybody. Good night.